All right, we are back. It is 11:15, and our next session is called Upgrading Programs within the Adult Basic Education. Now, over the past few years, I have had the pleasure of working with the Adult Basic Education community, specifically through the steering committee, as well as the various working groups that support the ABE community to help build out the ABE Transfer Guide, which is now part of the BC Transfer Guide. Now, the ABE Transfer Guide has actually been around for 20 plus years. They produced an ABE handbook that is used every year by ABE practitioners. But one of the projects that we worked on over the last couple of years was to build out a searchable database and process for regular updating that is now live on the BC Transfer Guide. And I was quite pleased to do that work because through my work through the with the committees, it was really driven home to me how important ABE is to the post-secondary world. ABE helps break down barriers of entry into post-secondary programs, and it provides access to post-secondary for those that might have previously thought that access was unattainable. I'm pleased right now to introduce Ted James, who is the registrar of Yorkville University, who has been conducting some research on behalf of BCCAT to take a look at how ABE is functioning in the role of increasing access within BC. Some of the key questions that have been examined include, is ABE upgrading a pathway to success for those who are initially underprepared for college or university? And how many former ABE students achieve post-secondary credentials at the same institution? This session will provide some of the answers to those questions as it takes a look at the number of ABE students that have been attending upgrading courses or programs over the past 13 years. Now, this session is a pre-recorded session. Ted is going to provide his presentation, and we have him standing by live to answer your questions. So once again, as a reminder, please be sure to put your questions into the chat or the Q&A because Ted will be here to answer your questions once we move to the live portion. So I'm going to now turn it over to you, Ted.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for attending this session. Hope to be able to give you an overview of the research project that I recently did for BCAT that was exploring upgrading programs and how students progress into further education in post-secondary institutions. And the upgrading programs are essentially referred to in the province as ABE, Adult Basic Education. The purpose of the study was to look at how successful ABE students are in their further studies at the same institution. Looking at, does ABE upgrading function as a pathway to success for those who initially were underprepared to enter their post-secondary programs? And how many of the former ABE students actually achieve and earn a post-secondary credential? There were two parts to this study. The first was to develop an inventory. This was of all of the ABE programs, upgrading programs offered in the province, which is at colleges, teaching universities, and some institutes. None of the research universities, the research-intensive universities, offer ABE programming. And ABE often goes by a variety of names, such as adult upgrading, developmental studies, career and college preparation. But for the purposes of this study, I used one term, which was ABE. These are offered in the province of BC main campuses of institutions, at regional sites, and a variety of neighborhood learning centers throughout the province. Some of them are large, some of them are small. Most of them will offer some on-campus courses, and increasingly, as a result of COVID, there is more online and hybrid courses available. Some institutions still offer ABE as a route to grade 12 completion, which is what it was originally designed to do. But over the years, the number of students who have high school completion has increased dramatically and is almost 96% in the province now. But there are still a number of students who do not have the prerequisite math or English skills in order to be able to be successful in post-secondary studies. And so most of the ABE programs in the province now have as their primary, or at least a large proportion of their purpose, is to provide preparation for further learning so that students can develop the prerequisite skills. The second part was to take a look at the outcomes of students And the data for the study came from three different types of sources. There was primary data that came from interviews that I did with ABE administrators, practitioners, instructors, and experts. The secondary data came from the central CDW, Central Data Warehouse extraction. So the province collects a wide variety of institutional data on the experiences of students in BC institutions. And that central data warehouse was able to provide me with a large cohort of students who had taken ABE courses, and for me to be able to follow them and track how successful they had been in their later studies. And then there was some tertiary data that came from a variety of previous ABE outcome studies that have been done in the province. And so part of my work was really to do a bit of a meta-analysis of all of those studies as well. So starting with the previous provincial studies, there have been a variety of these under different names and different purposes from 1992 up to the 2022 when the provincial data stopped being collected as the outcome studies. And these are based on surveys that were administered with current students, and they produce results that indicated a very high level of student satisfaction by ABE students in their programs. And there was other research which was done on former ABE students, sort of retroactively asking them how their programs had been, what had happened to them, and roughly 1 in 10 graduates of a BC post-secondary program had taken an ABE course. However, this previous research was limited in two key ways. It only included surveys of students, therefore it was self-report data, and only for those people who answered the survey. So the sample obviously was skewed by participation, voluntary participation. And then it didn't include students who had dropped out. So obviously the results don't provide a comprehensive picture of what's happening to every student. However, as I mentioned, the results from these studies generally, and here's an example from one of them, showed that where on the left-hand side here you can see the categories of overall satisfaction and would you recommend the program to others, for example, 86% would say yes. Jumping down, quality instruction, did you feel your instructors were satisfactory? The answers there range from 82 to 80 to 90. And then on outcomes, was the program a good preparation for other college courses? 87%. Did it provide confidence for you to achieve further goals? 86%, etc. So generally, the self-report data from existing or former students over these studies was quite high. For example, here's a graph showing how likely AB students were to enroll in future post-secondary education, asking them how likely they felt they would do those so. And you can see the top blue line here is hovering around 70% right the way through the period when these surveys were done, 2009 to 2014. So a fairly consistent response rate on how likely students were to pursue post-secondary. Then there's been a series of local studies done by institutions on their own populations. One college, for example, found that over 10% of all graduates took an ABE course, even though the students in ABE were only 2% of the college population. So a clear indication, at least in that study, that students are pursuing post-secondary education and that they're making it all the way through to graduation. Another college compared the direct entry of students versus those who had come via their ABE entry route, their success in a mandatory first-year English course, like English 100. And 80% of the former ABE students passed the course, compared to only 76% for all students in the course. Those figures, those percentages are pretty close. And Obviously, this was just simply one example and taken at one time, but it suggests that the former AB students are doing as well as those students who enter from a non-ABE route. And one teaching intensive university, for example, also did a study of the transition rates from students who started ABE and then how many of those took further studies at the same institution. And you can see the blue line, the ones who started in ABE, has reduced down to the orange line, the ones who actually went further forward and took post-secondary institution courses. And of course, not all students who take ABE intend to go on to further education anyway. And two other things to notice here is that basically the shape of the graphs is very, very similar, with the peaks and valleys are very similar. There is an overall decline, though, as you can see in both figures, and that's because the number of students who are taking ABE courses over the last decade or so has declined. So we would expect those numbers to both those lines to decline. Now on to the data which I got from the central data warehouse. What I did was work with them to be able to extract a cohort of students who had taken at least one ABE course over the last decade and a half, from 2009-10 to the last year that they had complete data for, which was 2022-23. And so these are students who take at least one ABE course and took at least one undergraduate level or trades course. And that produced a rather large cohort. You can see there of 124,000, almost 125,000. Of these students, 63% of them did transition into further education at the same institution. And of those students who did progress, 44% of them did obtain at least one credential at the university or the college. So if you take those two together, and it's probably easier to see that better in the slide showing the graph here, you can see that there's basically about a third of each category that is moving on, which means that something like 1/3 of all the students who started in ABE ended up finishing a academic credential and earning an academic credential. Has this varied over the years that the cohort was pulled from? And you can see there that yes, it has. There has been a significant increase in the number of students who are earning credentials in the period from 2009 to 2015-16, and then a bit of a plateauing, and then a general falling off, again, because the number of students who are taking ABE courses has declined in the last years. You can see also that there are three lines to this graph. The top one being the total number of credentials that are earned by ABE students, and then the red middle line are the ones at colleges and institutes, and then the light blue line at the bottom is the total at the teaching intensive institutions. And you can see that the number of students taking and earning credentials at the university level is less than at the college level, and this we would expect because there are more students taking ABE courses in colleges than there are in the universities. Here you can see the distribution of the type of credentials that were earned by the students at each type of institution. So first of all, you can see running along the bottom, the majority of students who earned a credential were doing it at the certificate and the diploma level. There were some at the associate degree level, some at the bachelor's level, and some at the graduate level. That's to be expected. Most ABE students are not likely to take on a 4-year degree program if they can finish earlier. and get out into the workforce. It takes more courage to be able to pursue a longer-term goal. However, you can see that, for example, at the teaching intensive universities, the picture is a little different. There, a large proportion of the students did go on and finish bachelor's degrees. Again, partly because they're more readily available at a teaching institution, teaching intensive university, I mean. I also did a comparison between the students who took ABE and earned a credential and the students who did not take ABE and who earned a credential. And although it's not very easy to tell from this chart, the main picture that emerges is obviously there are more credentials being earned in BC post-secondary institutions by people who didn't take ABE. And so those columns, the ones which are in orange, are obviously much larger than the ones in blue, which were the former ABE students. However, the general picture that emerges from this is that the proportion of students who are taking ABE courses and who go into further post-secondary education at the same institution is the same type of proportion as the students who begin their programs at post-secondary institutions and have not taken ABE. Over the years, the BCAT has been involved in studies which have shown that students, for example, who make the transition from a college to a university, compared to the ones who do that as by direct entry into the university, particularly the research intensive universities, and that's shown that the route of participation through by enabling the transition from a college to a university, that those students do as well as the students through direct entry. In other words, students who previously wouldn't have qualified to enter, say, for example, SFU and go to Douglas College and then transfer afterwards after 2 years, possibly taking the associate degree, although not always. Those students do as well as the ones who are direct entry. In other words, the system of transfer is functioning very well. This slide and the results that come from it indicate that exactly the same type of phenomenon is happening for students who are going through ABE and entering into post-secondary. It's functioning as a similar type of pathway of progress. And this is something which many of the people I interviewed said was important to realize, that these students do face a route that's rocky. For example, one person said, a lot of former ABE students repeat several first-year courses as they struggle to get into their stride. It can be a rocky road for them. Their cumulative GPAs are often lower than for direct entry undergraduates. It's understandable because they are often not just as academically strong. So things don't come so easily, and they may not have to work harder. So the success rates that we're showing here for ABE students should be viewed within that context, that their academic ability is often something they're continuing to build, and it cannot always be an easy road. So the conclusions that I drew were that ABE programs in BC are indeed facilitating successful student transitions into further education. And that pattern is consistent across time, as has been shown by the provincial and local studies of former institutions for ABE students, and also the Central Data Warehouse cohort that I looked at here, the 125,000 students. However, my conclusion needs to be tempered with a couple of caveats. A lot of the previous research that was done that I reported on is self-report data, and also the institutional-based data that I was able to obtain from some institutions is not generally publicly available. So it's hard for others to go in and actually reproduce some of the studies that I have looked at that were generously given to me by those institutions. So that does suggest that there is additional discussion and additional research that may be needed in order to be able to pull some of this into the public domain. But the picture that's emerging and has emerged over the last 1.5 decades is that the ABE programs are working as a route of facilitating student success in future studies. It's also worthwhile pointing out that there are many innovative practices that are occurring in BC to try to increase those ABE student success rates as well. And these were mentioned to me by the people I interviewed and appeared in the inventory of ABE programs that I was able to pull together. One of the interviewers said, what's happening is that we're seeking out new strategies and courses to provide more just-in-time rather than just-in-case curriculum. There's a general kind of drive in ABE programming to have more laddering into first-year courses or career core programming. In other words, to combine together and allow students to be taking ABE courses at the same time as regular college courses. This person went on to say, ABE programs can run the risk of ghettoizing students who make slow progress and eventually lose motivation. So it helps if students feel they've already started their real college program. And this led to people pointing out that the field was continuing to innovate. And I like this quote from one of the interviewers who said, we are somewhat on a cusp. The field is facing the need to reinvent itself from a past based on a deficit model of upgrading to a future additive model, one using tailored pathways rather than prescribed programs. We need to explore which ones of these can achieve the best results for students. And recent innovations have been encouraging, but we need more exploration. One size won't fit all. And that's the conclusion of my presentation. And I believe we now have time for some questions.
All right. Well, welcome back. It's now my pleasure to introduce Ted James, Registrar of Yorkville University, who's joined us today. And he's here to answer the questions that you have. So please, as a reminder, make sure you put them into the Q&A or the chat, and we will do our best to get them over here. So we are going to jump right into it. So we have a question from Mohammed. He says, hi, Ted, you touched on student success rate in the first year at the university level. Do you have any data about the success rate and dropout rate? This seems to be a common problem worldwide.
I'm not sure I fully understand your question. If you are talking about, do I have any data on the dropout rate of first-year students per se? No, that wasn't part of my study.
All right. And do you have any data about the success rate as well, or is that the same?
Again, if we're talking about specific years, no. The data that I received from the central data warehouse was not based on per year of the student. It was based upon per year of the institution. In other words, I wasn't able to tell the difference between when a student how many years, for example, it took a student to be able to earn a credential, or if indeed they dropped out. But that's something which probably could be explored through the central data warehouse, but it wasn't one of my variables.
All right. So hopefully that answers your question, Mohammed. If that wasn't quite what you were looking for, please feel free to throw in another question in the chat. We'll do our best to pass that on to Ted. We have a question from Stephanie Boychuk. For the percentage who received a credential, is that only at the same institution, or does it include students who transferred somewhere else to finish their credential?
It only includes the students who earned a credential at the same institution. That was the restrictive variable that I was given by BCAT originally. They were interested in people progressing on at the same institution. So theoretically, there would be a number of students who would perhaps have earned a credential at a different institution because they transferred elsewhere, but those were not captured in my data, no.
Okay. Another question from Stephanie. Is there any way to differentiate between ABE that is non-credit or developmental and ABE that has been turned into credit programming? The credit programming represents an increased cost to students.
Yes, that's a very good question. The ABE field, as you know, is very complicated with respect to, first of all, different names that are used for the programs. Some courses carry college credit, university credit, some don't. Um, some are referred to as non-credit, but they are counted as part of the overall trajectory of the student on their transcript. Uh, no, I think the best answer for me to give to you is no, I wouldn't be able to parse that out.
Okay. And I am going to go back to my chat 1 second. There's a question from Marnie Finlater from Vancouver Community College who asks, like, could this reflect a trend in most institutions to offer academic level courses at the 100 level that are being used to serve the same purpose? So, for example, a 100 level biology course with no prerequisites that is designed for prospective nursing students. It does open up funding and allows departments to more easily determine potential applicants. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, that's a very good question. The ABE field has evolved tremendously over the last 30 years. Back in the days of the 1970s, when ABE curriculum was basically the old manpower vocational training, BTSD, the majority of the students were simply picking up high school credentials. But over the years, there has been an evolution across the province and elsewhere that has looked at trying to integrate better the upgrading that students do and link that to the first year of the courses so that students are not sort of ghettoized into an ABE program that is sort of disassociated from the goals, the academic or vocational goals that the students have. And so there's been a great deal of sort of dual credit or combined programming. And in many institutions, there are courses, first year courses, as you mentioned, that are offered by math, science, English, that are designed to be sort of a leg up into a program or as part of a prerequisite for students who are underprepared. And so many of those courses don't get labeled as ABE, even though they are functioning as that kind of upgrading transition.
Okay. We have Tabitha Smith who has submitted. We have found that our programs that intertwine ABE and prerequisite admission requirements are undersubscribed. Do you think combining both ABE and PS courses is a good idea, which is referencing your last quote, to encourage students and motivate them to continue? I guess the question is, how do we make these courses more appealing?
I'm surprised by that because generally speaking, the evolution of ABE, as I just mentioned, has been to try to make that combination so that students get a leg up into their programming rather than having to wait to pursue their quote real educational goal. So I think you might need to take a look locally at exactly why that might be, because in general there has been a lot more sort of combined skills approaches that are being made to facilitate and accelerate the progression of students who need upgrading into their programs in advance. And there's been sort of conditional admission processes that allow people to do that. So that may be a local issue.
Just a reminder, everybody, please keep the questions coming. This is excellent. Really appreciate it. I have a question for you, Ted. I mean, how did you take a look at how the results varied amongst different institution types, and what were some of those variations?
Yes, I showed that on one of the slides, figure 15. Basically, there were more certificates that were awarded at college level, largely because that tends to be where they are, where they are offered. especially at different locations around the province, the interior, the north, for example. There were more Associate of Arts degrees that were offered and provided by colleges. Students in my cohort, more of them picked up Associate of Arts at colleges than they did at the teaching intensive universities. But of course, there were more degrees that were as certificates that were picked up by AB students. So yes, there was some variation for sure.
You mentioned that ABE participation has declined during the cohort years. Do you have any ideas why that's the case?
Yes, this is a little bit outside of my study, so I'm a little bit sort of speculating here. But first of all, the number of students who have completed high school in the province has increased dramatically in the last 30 years. Some might say that this was possibly social promotion rather than skill development. But nonetheless, the number of students who are entering institutions with high school graduation has greatly increased. Whether they have the prerequisite skills that they need could, of course, be debated as another matter. But that's definitely one reason. A second reason is that a lot of students are facing a cost factor. This is not just for ABE, but for other program areas as well, that it's a lot more expensive. And although there are provincial financial aid programs for ABE, they don't have access to student loans. So pursuing a post-secondary education through a route that requires ABE or upgrading can be a financial burden for some students. The third thing is that I think that there has been a general sort of decline in the number of students who are considering whether or not post-secondary is the best thing for them to do, at least initially. And many are sort of leaving high school and moving into work rather than necessarily moving into a post-secondary course. So, we are seeing the domestic enrollments going down.
So, now that you've worked your way through this research project, what are some of the recommendations you would have for further discussion or further areas of research?
Well, in the report, I made two types of suggestions. One was for where we might look at some further research, and I think that the field is open and could be quite fruitful for local institutions to be doing more of their own local institutional research, particularly about comparing students who enter through the ABE route compared to those who come through the direct entry route in sort of gateway courses like basic mathematics, physics, chemistry, English, and see, to build up locally, is there much of a difference between those who come through the two different routes? I also suggested that there could be more local research dealing with students who were graduating from programs. So if a local institution was to look at of its graduating class of 2024, for example, how many of those students had taken an ABE course or an upgrading course? I suggested that at the provincial level that there might be some different subgroups who would be useful to do further research on, such as Indigenous students and their, to what extent is this general picture that has emerged from the research that I did, how is that similar or different from a subgroup of Indigenous students, which I didn't break out. And I also made some suggestions for further discussion. I think that the area has a very large number of different labels that are used, ABE, career upgrading, developmental studies. It's not always clear that those labels are the same thing. And I don't know, it might be worth further discussion to see if some kind of more common nomenclature could be provided. The ABA articulation framework that you first mentioned at the very beginning of this session is somewhat dated now because it was based upon an old four-level ABE framework. And as we have seen, the evolution of ABE, which includes a lot more of combined skills and gateway pathways, so it's possible that some of that framework might need to be revisited. I also think that, as you mentioned earlier, the funding model for ABE has always been a bit of a bugaboo because of the fact that it's not treated as being a post-secondary program and not eligible for student loans. And so, to some extent, that acts as an access problem.
That's something that I've heard quite frequently in discussions around ABE as well. This has all been a very interesting presentation. I really appreciate you taking the time to do the pre-recording and be here to live to answer questions. I guess I just have one final question: is where can we obtain a copy of the report?
Yes, I believe if you go to the BCAT website, you'll see it on the front page there.
All
It should,
right.
should,
Okay.
should be there for a while.
All right. Well, I think that this is a good point to wrap it up. So I want to thank you, Ted, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. This session will be available for everybody to view on streaming after the fact once we upload it. And we'll also try to put a copy of the report into Whova as well to make it available for you as well. So thank you to everybody who attended and submitted questions through the Q&A. So we are just before 12 o'clock. I just want to thank you all. I think what we'll do is we will take a break for lunch, and we will be back at 1 o'clock where we will have a session on simultaneous enrollment and letters of permission. Just as a regular reminder, the photo contest is ongoing. I'm looking forward to checking that out during the lunchtime, and we also have our trivia contest that's going. So we hope that you will continue to participate, and we will see you back at 1 o'clock sharp.